Well, we're doing a little pattern making on our Atlas index centers today for the mill. And this is a picture of our tailstock that we want to reproduce. And while we're doing, we're going to go ahead and produce a complete set. So we've got a headstock end and a tailstock end, so hopefully we'll end up with something like this. This actually consists of 3 castings. And there's the headstock, tailstock, and then we've got the little bar that has our index pin to hook into our gears on the end of the headstock, so it will index up. So those are all 3 of the main castings. And what I'm working on today is the headstock and the tailstock patterns. So here's our original headstock that we had. So we've kind of taken dimensions off of this and scaled them to where I think they should be. For our headstock casting, this is going to be our base plate here, and this will be the back plate of this. Will be this portion here. And what will happen is we will just mount this on here just like that when we're done. Now, normally if we're just making a one-piece pattern, why, I'll make the whole base plate and then everything will attach on top of that. I think this is going to be a match plate pattern for both of these. I'm going to mount them on a match plate. We'll probably cast 1 or 2 just to see if they're going to cast up with them assembled like this, and we'll just coat down on the back of it. But we'll deal with that when we get there. So anyway, to make them on a match plate, this will be on the bottom side. So it will be oriented like this down in our pattern. And our match plate will be right here on our center line here, which is going to go along here. And then the back part of it and half of the headstock center will be split right there. So that's the way that's going to go together. And we've got that part so far. And the tailstock, we've scaled it to where we've got the same thing, be like that. And then our tailstock will set here. And I haven't cut this because I don't know exactly where it's going to end up. When I scale these, why, this is about 3 inches, I believe. Yeah. And when I look at all the pictures I've got, it looks like the barrel on the tailstock is about 3.5 inches. So, and I don't have the height yet exactly for these. So that's why I've left extra material both on the headstock and the tailstock. So those are there. So for the barrels on the headstock and the tailstock, what we're going to do is a split pattern like this. There's enough for both of them here. I'm going to glue them together with some paper in between so I can separate them later. And then we'll cut them in half. I'll set them up in the lathe and we'll turn our contours for our outer barrel. And I'm going to core both of these, I think, so we'll leave a stub on each end to support the core. And we're not going to leave a very big core, probably, 9/16, 5/8 of an inch core through it, something like that. It's not really important. It makes it a little bit easier to line it when I build the patterns. But the main thing is we'll get rid of a little bit of that material. There's going to be so much mass, especially when we start casting this in iron and in my little home foundry, that it's better off if we've got some sort of a core so we don't take quite as much material. And then, of course, I've got a couple of pieces for our split cotters that will go right here for our patterns. We'll add those later. So all we're going to do is glue these 2 halves together, and what we do with them is just give them some glue on both sides. And we'll spread that out with one of my high-tech spreaders here, which is just whatever credit card or rewards card that I happen to have. You can do this with just regular white glue. Since I'm turning these, I prefer to have a little bit more holding power on them. But that'll work just fine. Newsprint works just fine for these. Just stick them together. Throw a couple of clamps on them to hold them. And we'll just set those aside to dry. Once they're dry, we can cut them in half and set them up in the lathe and turn them. If I was feeling really brilliant, I would mount both the headstock and the tailstock patterns on the same match plate. That would work fine for casting them in aluminum, but when I get to casting them in cast iron, why, that's maybe a little bit bigger lump of cast iron than I really want to handle at one time in my little foundry. So I'm going to mount these individually, and we'll do them one at a time. Now, these I think originally had a core print in them. So what would have happened is this may very well have been just square off this pattern down to probably this point, someplace along here, and then I had a parting line, I'm not sure where. And what would have happened is there would have been a core, and it would have gotten set in between the two halves of the mold before you closed it up, and that would have formed this cavity here. And the reason I say that, I'm sure they used a core in here because there's no draft or even a little bit of negative draft down inside. I'm not sure which way I'm going to cast these yet. I will probably end up and use a core print, but for now I'm just going to form the patterns as a one-piece pattern and maybe add at least neutral here, or maybe a little bit of draft in it so that we can extract it from the sand, and we may try and cast them without a core. But I kind of anticipate that there will have to be a core put in them. Like I say, we've got some negative draft on this point, and it looks like the core probably came down to here. We've got a little bit of a raise there, and they've grounded away here. So I can't tell for sure, but there may have been a part down there. So I'm not sure exactly how they cast it, but I definitely see a parting line here. Comes to the center, and then we've got some breakaway here on both sides of this boss for the split cotter. So I think they probably had a core that may have come clear up to there, and that's just a little bit of fallout when they cast them. So we'll go ahead. I'll let this cure up, and we'll turn the barrels for both the headstock and the tailstock, and then we'll start assembling it. I'm going to build a little jig to hold the two pieces, to hold the barrel in alignment, so that I can have position off of probably this front edge. That way I can work on the back edge. We'll set this down on a base plate and have a stop here on the front that's the same distance for both the headstock and the tailstock, and then I'll run a couple of plates on the end that I can run centers into so that I can hold alignment with the barrel to the base plate. Then we can go ahead and fit up the rest of these last three pieces, which will be this one, and the back. I intend these to go eventually on a match plate. I'll cast up a couple of them in aluminum first to make sure they're going to cast okay. We've got draft right if we're going to use a core box or exactly what we're going to do. But so I've done a couple of things in my pattern making to adapt for that. So hopefully it'll work out okay. So let me show you what I got. This is the headstock pattern that I had. And this is the one that I'm going to show you here. I'm going to do the same process to the tailstock. So we'll see if we can't get the headstock pretty well fitted up, at least this first part of it. And then I'll do the same thing to the tailstock. And I may record that, I may not. It's going to be the same process. So what I did, you saw the little pieces that I glued up yesterday to turn into the barrels. Well, here they are. This is the headstock end, and this is the tailstock end. And the reason they're taped up is because I put paper in between when I glued them together so that I could separate them, and I've already separated them. So we're just holding them together for right now. So anyway, we've got them turned down, and they came out just fine. I've got them, like I say, I've already separated them. So what I've done is I've made a little fixture to hold all this, and this is the basic cutout for the back. And one of the changes I made was I've glued paper on here too, because when it goes to a match plate, I'm going to want to be able to separate them there. So here's the base for the headstock, and then this is the basic outline for the back, and this is our barrel. Now my concern was being able to align the barrel properly so it's parallel to the base and it mounts somewhat like this is the way it goes, and then of course our bracing will go out front. Let me move the camera over here and bring you in a little bit closer, and I'll show you what I've done. Well, I've made a little fixture. So let me get some of this other stuff out of the way. And I made this two ways. And it's basically a little set of centers. So the way it works is I've got a fence up here. So this aligns here. This will be the part that affixes here. And it aligns with the back of the fixture. So when we're clamped up tight there, well, we know we've got alignment there. And then our headstock barrel needs to sit in here. I've got basically the headstock end, I've got a tailstock end, and I drilled these for our little dowels. And the reason I drilled them is to align them so that my split on here will align with the back. And I'll show you that when we get that far too. Anyway, this just sits right on here like that. That one goes in there. And that holds us where we need to be aligned to match up with the other parts. So I've already got this drilled. We just stick us a couple of screws in here. And we've still got a little bit of rotation here. And this part will sit in here. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to contour this, sand it to fit so that it sits here. Somebody didn't think that through, did they? So we're going to have to go back and do a little modification to our little fixture. And what we'll do, I thought I had this all figured out to where it aligned right, but I was mistaken. So this is going to have to sit here. So it needs to, do we have this set up right? We don't have this set up right. Let's try this again. The best laid plans. How about if we turn this around the right way? There's a headstock there. That way, that way. And we still don't have quite enough room. Huh. Okay, that's getting awful close there. Really close. I think that might be it right there. Now, the reason I did my centers out here on the end like I have was so that I've got these little dowels inset into them. That way I can go ahead and untape these two halves and just have the one half on here, and I can clamp it up against the dowels. That way I can take and align the split on this with the inside of this, and that way I can have a flat plane and make sure I've got my parting line right. So let's just go ahead and pull this off and see if it's going to work the way I think it should. Now, if we take the half off, here you can see that craft paper that's still on there, and then we're still pivoting around that point there, so we've still got that so let's turn it around the right way here. Sits in there just like that. Clamps on the back, and our front edge should align here, maybe. I've got enough hands to do everything. And then if we were to take another piece of material, that should hold everything in alignment right there. Don't know if that's a very good view of that, but that's the way those halves will made up right there. We'll have to fill that a little bit, but and then our parting line is right, stays aligned with the way we need it to be. So that looks pretty good. I think we'll go ahead and add a little bit of glue to that. I think we can do that just on this first half here. I think that looks pretty good. I think we'll go ahead and leave it right there. You can take this, add a little bit of glue to the bottom edge of it. Lined up here. That looks pretty good. Got some glue that'll glue that up. Hold that in position. We're aligned on the back for our parting line. And there's the first part of it. I think we'll go ahead and let that cure up. Once we get that done, then we can adjust our little fixture a little bit. We can go ahead and glue our bottom piece in. So what we're going to do is we're going to let it cure up. Then we'll loosen up our fixture here on this end. Then we can go ahead and slide this piece where it needs to go and glue it in position. Then it'll be ready to go ahead and fit our other supports on the other side here. And that's looking good. We'll have to contour these edges here. We'll smooth them around. We've got a boss that sticks out here on this side. Part of these will fit after we get the rest of the pieces in. And in the next one, we'll go ahead and install our ribs on the other side. Hopefully this is something that interests you a little bit. If you didn't have it already, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button. If you hit the bell notification, you'll know when I put out a new video. And any comments, suggestions, complaints, leave them in the comment section for me below. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch.